use that? How do they engage their employer? And what is it really all about? So that is what this talk is about. We talked about the employer side this morning, and this afternoon we're going to talk about it from the job search standpoint. And of course, things are just going to be that way today. So one of the questions that we asked was, do you know how to find a job? And of course, a lot of people are not going to answer that they do know, that they don't know how to find a job. We don't like to admit that we don't know how to do something. So I really think that this is underrepresented in the community. We asked what were some of the top 3 ways that people found a job. Number 1 was ask friends. Okay, now let's look at that from a data set. If you were trying to find a job and you constantly asked your same group of friends, what kind of result are you going to get? You're not going to get much of a difference in that result. That is actually the definition of insanity, when you keep doing something and you expect a different result. So asking your friends is great, but you need to be expanding your group of friends. Second was they would search for companies they know. At this moment, right now, can you name at least 3 companies in your mind that you would want to apply to? Can you think of them off the top of your head? So if you're just going by those companies that you know, rather than spending the time researching the companies that are out there that are going higher skill set, you again are narrowing your opportunities for finding a job. And third was searching online job postings. But what's fascinating is that many people do not realize that there are several different places that companies post their jobs. Maybe in LinkedIn, maybe Indeed, maybe a job board. And what's fascinating is that we're so good at finding different resources to pick locks or be able to, win the CTF, but is finding all of the various different resources that could help us in an overall job search. We're not so good at that. So we asked what were some of the top reported ways that employers find candidates. So we can find sort of that intersection between what people are doing to find a job and the way employers are trying to find their candidates. So the number 1 way that companies are finding their candidates is through career sites, and that is their own career page on their own site. That is where they're going to post all their jobs. If they created an area where you can create a profile, that's where they're going to look first. The next is going to be job boards. When you look at overall studies of the tools that companies use for finding their candidates, number 2 is always going to be job boards. Number 3, and this sometimes flips back and forth, referrals are sometimes number 1, they're sometimes 3. Referrals. Does everyone know what a referral system is? Yes? No? Okay. So you may have heard in the industry, if I refer my friend into a job and they get hired for a job, they actually get a bonus. So this is what's interesting is a lot of people go, that actually sounds like it's sort of, unethical. It sounds like something that, someone's getting a kickback. Okay, look at it differently. Look at it from the standpoint that a company is trying to find really great talent. And what they're doing is they're making sure that the people who work inside their company, the people who know the kind of work that they are doing, that understand the culture of that company, are the ones finding those people who might come in and work for that company, because you are saving the recruiting staff and the talent acquisition staff time and money, because you are pre-screening those people as far as their overall skills and if they're going to fit within the culture. So it is actually one of the most effective and efficient ways for companies to find jobs. So what does that mean for you? You need to know people who are working in various different companies who can actually refer you in. Do you know the employers that your friends work at? Are they companies that you might want to go work at? You need to start finding out who works at which companies, and do they like working there, and can they refer you in, and is there a referral program within that company? Finally, social media. It's interesting, social media around 10, 15 years, but it's now starting to creep up in a way that people are finding their talent. A lot of the recruiters that we have been working with here who have been doing resume reviewing and career coaching have really said that they have reached out on social media. If someone says that they're having a difficult time finding a job, they actually do reach out to that person and provide them with assistance and support. A lot of people who have been exhibiting at this conference actually have hired people off of social media. So what I would say to you on that, are you connecting with recruiters on social media? The other aspect is, are you watching what you're saying on social media? Because remember, it's going to stay there, and someone is actually going to look at what you're posting on social media before they contact you for a job. I'm not one that would talk about HR law, but there are several online reputation reports that are out there, and they constantly ask the question, does a recruiter check out social media before they call a candidate for an interview? And they say, yes, they do. So what are some of the top ways that job seekers from this survey were finding jobs? So one was networking, which is great, but they're not really quite sure, who are they networking with? It's probably that same small group of friends. Social media, but are you following the companies that you want to go work for? Are you keeping an eye on them? Referrals, this is really low. I mean, 60% of the community is using referrals when it's actually the most effective and efficient way for companies to be able to hire people. And the fourth, job boards. Making sure that when you're looking at a job board that it is not just one that you're looking at. Because you have to realize that a company has to pay to provide their jobs on a job board. So you're going to want to have 4 or 5 different job boards in your resource toolkit. And it's fascinating because a lot of people think, well, I'm just on this one. Well, not all the jobs are going to be posted there. Not all the companies that you're interested in are going to be there. So you really need to make sure that you're including several of them within your toolkit. What was fascinating was we sort of asked, what are your job search problems? What are your challenges that you're running into? And interesting is that people are not finding the companies that are going to hire for their specific skill set. And this is going to take something on your part to do a lot of research. Just because you know a company sponsored a happy hour or they gave away really great t-shirts at the conference, it's not necessarily an indication that they're the same kind of company that's going to be able to hire for your skill set. And sometimes this also might require that you do some reverse education. We do reverse engineering in this community, but doing some reverse education. If a recruiter reaches out to you and starts talking about a specific technology, but you understand that they may not fully comprehend it, please don't be like most of the community and ridicule them. Take a moment and ask them, do they understand the technology that they're talking about? Most of the recruiters I work with are very happy to have you provide them the education like, look, I don't think you're using this in the right way. And you're confusing Java with JavaScript, and please don't do that because that's insulting everybody. What's fascinating is that a lot of people are frustrated with their career because they haven't spent the time understanding what is the next step in their career. I can't tell you how many times people will reach out to me and go like, I just need a job. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, time out. What do you want to do next? Well, I like this, but I want to no. You put into your GPS system the address of where you're going next. Why are you not putting an address on where you want to go next for your career? That is not the recruiter's job. That is your job. That is your job to present to them, I've done 10 years of this, 3 years of this, I really like doing this, and this is where I see myself next. So you really need to focus on where you want to go next in your career. And a lot of times people are overlooking the opportunities that are right there in front of them. Specifically, if you're at a company right now and you really like the company, it's really short on traffic, there are other things you can do, you need to be saying, is there somewhere else in the company I can go? Yes, I may have been doing pen testing or may have been doing crypto or something, but there's something else I want to do with this company. I like the people I work with. And that is on you to create that next step. That is not the job of your manager, and that is not the job of a recruiter. It's a recruiter's job to educate you on the opportunities at their company and how it is the next step in your career. But you need to find out, okay, I eventually want to get 2 or 3 years down the road, I want to do this. What is the next step? And if you don't know what that next step is, that's where you find a mentor. That's where you talk to a recruiter and you ask them, I want to get to this next step in my career. Do you have that opportunity? Or do you know of a company that will have that opportunity? And finally, a lot of people don't know the recruiters in the community to connect with. There are lots of really great recruiters that were here at the con all weekend. But did you network with them? Usually we see a recruiter in a room when we run for the door, rather than saying, this is somebody who can actually help me with my career. And it's fascinating to me that we have people who will give us recommendations on travel or a great sushi restaurant or where to go on vacation. But there's one thing that's really important to our day-to-day life. We don't have a network of people who can recommend the next step, can recommend companies. Why are we not networking with recruiters? There are plenty of them out there that want to talk to us. If there's a recruiter in the room, do you want to raise your hand? I knew there was one, so I told you I wouldn't call you out, but I lied. So the other thing is understanding the tools that you have. A lot of us sort of throw a bunch of things onto a resume and believe that that's going to do it. That's going to be the spaghetti against the wall that's going to stick and we're going to get the job that we want. Sorry, that's not the way it is anymore. You really need to make sure that your resume is an advertisement for you. It is not getting you the job, it is getting you the phone call. And please, whoever is in the community telling you to put a grid in the middle of your resume, would you please tell them to stop? Because you actually do not know how that resume is going to be read. It is going to be read on a computer, but you don't know the user interface. You do not know the applicant tracking system, and you do not know if they're reading it on a desktop or if they're reading it on their mobile phone. You need to keep it as simple as possible. I can't tell you how many resumes we saw for resume review for the last 2 days, and they all looked really pretty. You don't need a pretty resume. You need a content-rich resume that tells your skills and tells the value that you are going to bring to the company. It is not a cut and paste of your last 10 jobs. It is the value and difference that you made at that company and what you did to save the money, to bring the project in on time, the conflict resolution. You need to present that in a business sense. And a lot of us are really big on this long flowing paragraph at the beginning. Please stop. A recruiter is not, they're going to get tired by sentence 2. Have 5 objectives at the top of your resume. The first 3 are going to be those objectives, those skills that you do really well and that you want to continue doing. Please don't put something in a skill set that says that is something you don't want to do. Please don't continue going down the route of I'm really good at X skill and people keep hiring me for that, but I hate doing it. Don't do it. Put in the skills that you really enjoy doing and that you're going to be successful for. The last 2 bullet points really want you to customize those to the job that you're applying for, because that is where you're really going to start telling them, these are the things I'm going to do for your company with my specific skills. A lot of the resumes that I see have bold, underline, italics, a lot of fancy stuff in the first 2 inches. Realize that most recruiters are going to be reviewing your resume in a preview pane. They're not going to look at the entire resume. They're going to look at the top 2 inches. If those top 2 inches are filled with bold and italic and underlining and how they can get in touch with you, you've missed the opportunity to tell them all of the great skills that you're going to bring. Name, email address, maybe cell phone number, and then go right into the top skills so that you're seen in that preview screen. Understand that you are going to have to talk about yourself in many different ways. And you've already agonized over putting together a resume. But you're going to have to talk about yourself on LinkedIn. You're going to have to talk about yourself in an application. So you should have other ready-made content available rather than going through that writer's block every time you have to fill out an application and you don't know how to talk about yourself. And finally, as I said before, be careful about your social media. I've had to coach a lot of people on the fact that they're ranting about one thing or another. There's enough things out there in the world to rant about. But that is also showing a different side of you that you really don't want the recruiters or the HR people looking at. So make sure that what you're putting out there is in a positive light. If you want to do something negative, make sure that you're finding a private channel that you can share that on. In this community, we have many different kinds of people who help with talent acquisition. Most are the direct recruiters. And these are the recruiters who actually sit at the company, are paid by the company. Their job is to make sure that they're finding the right talent to work at that team to make sure that they're meeting their overall business objectives. Then we have the headhunters and the staffing firms. And you have to realize that the headhunters and staffing firms have a different objective. They are not necessarily looking to make sure that the culture fit is there and the business objective is being met. They're there so that they can get their commission because they've put a butt in a seat. There are also really great recruiters in the community that are part of staffing firms. But overall, you need to make sure that when you're talking to someone, you ask, who do they work for? Which company do they work for? What kind of recruiter are they? And how are they incentivized to make sure you're in that spot? And you will find that there's a big difference between those who actually work for the company and those who are working for a staffing firm or headhunter. So I just went over with what the different changes are or the different types. This goes back to we don't have a network of recruiters. And I'm really surprised if someone was asked, do you know, can anyone in the room say they know more than that one recruiter that's in the room? Okay, Nicole can, a few people. And it's fascinating that people don't keep in touch. We keep in touch with our family, we keep in touch with our friends, but we don't keep in touch with recruiters who actually can make a difference in our career and our day-to-day job. And how do you network with these recruiters? Most often than not, you'll meet them either here at a con, or if somebody calls you for an interview and it doesn't quite work out that you're going to move to the next step, but you actually had a really great conversation with them, continue networking with them. Ask them if you can connect with them on LinkedIn or a social media. Ask them if you can check back with them on a regular basis. Every 6 months, set yourself a calendar notice to connect with your recruiters. Hi, how you doing? Happy holidays. I just finished this certification and that certification. This is the kind of project I'm working on. What are you working on? And that's about it. It's not going to take more than a half hour. But what it's going to mean is that next time you need your resume reviewed, the next time you need a little coaching through a difficult work situation, or you're thinking about making a jump, you already have 5 to 7 people who are in your corner. 5 to 7 people who can actually say, okay, this person might be ready for this position. But you also have to understand that recruiters do change jobs. And they may have interviewed you for one position in one company, and all of a sudden they've gone to a new company, and you're the perfect fit. But they don't know if you're interested, they don't know any connection details, but they may have that great job for you. Also, recruiters network with other recruiters. 90% of the recruiters that I work with take the time to make sure that if they found someone who is a great candidate, who knocked it out of the park, but the hiring manager didn't really like them or it didn't quite fit for there, they make sure they share that resume with their network of recruiters. Because you have invested in that relationship with the recruiter, that recruiter is going to be an advocate for you. And you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. I'm asked time and time and time again, I have all these certifications in education, why can't I get a job? And I'm going to tell you, it's experience over education. I appreciate that we have some really great universities in this area that have some really great programs out there. but by and large, it's experience over education. And the first thing you're going to say to me is, I don't know how to get experience. Your home lab. Are you building something at home? Are you satisfying your curiosity on how to set up a NOC by building one at home? Are you doing things to make sure that you're constantly keeping sharp with your skills? Competitions. How many of you in the room have been part of any competition in the last month? Great. How many of you do more than 6 or 7 competitions a year? Okay. Now, have you ever considered that a competition is work experience? It is a short-term goal. It is working with people you've never worked with before. You have an adversary or a challenge you've never seen before, and you have a deadline. What does that sound like? It sounds like crisis management at any employer. So why are you not taking your competitions and creating them to be used as experience? The number one thing that I recommend with this is anytime you come out of a competition, I know you want a high five, I know you want to go get a beer, go write down what happened at the competition. What was the challenge? What were the parameters? Who dropped the ball? Who picked up the ball? Who did you work with? And what did you fail at? And what did you learn? Because there's always going to be that question in an interview that's going to say, tell me something you failed at and you learned. And I was like, not one of us is going to say, well, back at my other job, the NOC fell down fell apart while I was, no, you don't want to say that. You want to say, well, I was part of this competition and I didn't do this and I learned something. Be sure that you're keeping track of the competitions that you're part of, because there are many recruiters who are actually looking at competitions as a way of finding new talent. But most importantly, when you're at a competition, if you enjoyed working with somebody, why aren't you networking with them? Yes, it's really great that you know their Twitter handle, but connect with them on LinkedIn, ask them where they work, ask them if they like working there and if they're hiring and if they would refer you in. If you've had this really great experience and you're not leveraging it to support your career, you have just thrown all that experience out the door. A lot of people are overlooking military reserves, and there are several people I know in the community who have leveraged this really well. So looking at the military reserves is a way to say you have a 2 to 3 year commitment. You go in and you work for a weekend a month and then once a year for about 2 or 3 weeks. But you're getting real life work experience. And if you're interested to getting into the security cleared market, you can also be on a track to get your security clearance approval. So this is a great way. Yes, you have to make a 2 or 3 year commitment, but if you're really looking for the experience on some of the challenging issues, one thing is to look at military reserves. I'm fascinated that a lot of people are not willing to look at new industries at different levels. So I'll talk to someone who's been in the services industry for a long time, and they'll be contacted by healthcare, finance, energy, any of these areas which is growing with opportunities, and it's the Wild West because a lot of people have not been in that industry to set regulations or standards. A lot more growing opportunities for your career if you go into a new industry and say, you know what, I may know a lot more, but I'm going to take that junior position because it's going to give me an opportunity to understand what's going on in this industry, what's going on in this company, and I can create a better path. And finally, working on your technical and non-technical skills. It is really great to have all of the certifications, and it's really great to be able to say that you know how to work crypto or something like that, but it's also just as important to work on your non-technical skills. Communication, presentation, writing. I know it sounds like boring stuff, but we are being asked more and more in the security community to explain why things are risky. We're being asked to explain how to mitigate risk. But we're also needing to work on our non-technical skills through the interviews. I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and say, I get to this one specific stage within the interviewing process and I freeze. Take the time to practice. Take the time, if you know that the technical interview is coming up today at 3 Be sure you're working with your buds at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock that morning to go through technical interviews so that you know how to answer those questions, that you warm up. Same thing if you're going in for a face-to-face interview. If you tend to freeze up in social situations, really take the time to prepare. Check out your wardrobe the day before, maybe do a map where you're going to go, drive, figure out the traffic patterns, figure out if you're going to run into some congestion so that you're not nervous going into that interview. And then make sure that 1 or 2 people can work with you that morning before you go in and just get you warmed up talking about yourself, talking through scenarios, getting you comfortable, and finding specific topics that you can talk about without getting nervous. We were talking about this earlier about, video games or sports or something. Making sure that you have that, sort of chat fodder in your head, because all of us get nervous thinking that they're going to ask us one specific set of questions. They want to get to know you. They want to get to know what drives you. What is your passion? So maybe run through some of those questions ahead of time and have some topics that you can talk about rather than getting nervous and freezing up in the interview. Another way that I really sort of did some data on how people were advancing in their careers is doing a survey on community volunteering and people who were volunteering in the community a lot and asking them how that helped them with their overall career. So one way was volunteering, organizing, like this conference, the speaker wranglers. It's a really great way to work on different skills, but it's also a really great way to get work experience that you talk about in your interviews and on your resumes. But it's also a way to expand your network, because you're getting mixed in with another group of people who are in the community, who are technically as skilled as you are, and they work for different companies that you may not have heard of. I went over competing. Definitely, if you're into competitions, really look at keeping a log of all of the different competitions that you've been part of and all of the different ways that that has benefited your technical skill development. Presenting. A lot of people think that presenters are handpicked, and they're not in this community, which is absolutely fabulous. All of us, when we're thinking about presenting at a conference, have to think about the timeline of when the conference is going on and when the call of proposals is available. That is talking about organizing and planning. It's also when you go in and fill out the call for proposals, you have to do a short abstract, a long abstract, and the key takeaways. These are things that can actually help you learn how to write better, learn how to convey your ideas and thoughts in writing to other people so that they can understand what you're presenting. We're not given much opportunity to work on our written skills within the workplace, so submitting it as part of a proposal is a really great way to start working on those skills. Most conferences, if they don't accept your proposal, they're more than happy to give you feedback on why you didn't get accepted. And many of them will have 2 rounds of acceptances, 2 rounds of deadlines. If you didn't make it for the first, but you got feedback, and you were able to incorporate that back into your proposal, you then send it in, more than likely you're going to be selected. But it's getting your peers to give you feedback on your writing. Are you truly conveying the ideas that you should be conveying to the new audience? Whoops. When we did the survey on community volunteering, and I want you to understand that you don't have to put in like hours and hours of work. Most of the volunteers only gave about 8 hours of their time each month. And what's fascinating is a lot of us will well, that's too much time. We're talking about your career. We're talking about your next job opportunity. You might want to give up that TV show. You might want to give up just one thing and sliding in volunteering a different way. The other thing is a lot of people don't understand that 90% of the organizing for a conference is done online and phone calls. So it's not like you have to drive somewhere and meet. It is you just have to log into Slack once or twice a week, and then you have to be on an Uber conference. That's it. Yes, you have to be here the day of or the day before, but that doesn't mean, the volunteering is primarily remote, primarily all online and phone calls. When we did a survey of what the non-technical skills were, it was really fascinating. It was teamwork, organization, planning, and communication. Has everyone heard of LinkedIn? Yeah. No. And what's fascinating is that they put out a LinkedIn talent study every year, and they always list what are the top non-technical or soft skills that employers are looking for. Those are them: organization, planning, communication. So if you're getting those non-technical skills in volunteering, and it is the top 4 things in non-technical skills that employers are looking for, you have a ready-made way of gaining those. We went a little bit deeper and really sort of, okay, were these top or were they really top? And yes, 81% teamwork. So many times when we're at work, we're told to work with 2 or 3 people, and it's more getting over the, I don't want to work with that person again, versus coming into a conference environment like this and we're creating new learning patterns because we're interacting with people that we don't see on a day-to-day regular basis. And it really challenges us to learn better skills on playing nicely in the sandbox. But communication, we can all think about the conversations that we have with our family members, our friends, and in the workplace. Conversations usually go down the exact same pattern every single time. We are not challenged with being able to explain to someone what we really mean in communication, and that requires a lot of exercise. So that is where sometimes it can be really draining within volunteering work because you're explaining yourself all the time, but at least you're learning those new neural pathways on how to communicate with someone who is not from your same workplace or your family. 95% of the participants said that volunteering improved their networking and social skills. So we talk about networking as being a #1 way of being able to find a job, but we need to constantly be expanding and working on our network. Going into a conference, going into an organization within your community is a really great way to build your network. And I'm not talking about you're going from 10 people to 200 overnight. You're talking about 1 or 2 people, and then maybe the next time 1 or 2 people more. I've been in the community 8 years, and this is probably the first con I've been at that I knew more than 3 people, and it was really nice. So this is something you're going to have to give yourself time with. It is not like pour in water and you have an instant network. It is something that you're going to have to work on. And social skills. We in the community are not really good at our social skills. A lot of us are introverts. That's me. I'll have my downtime later, but we really need to work on our social skills, and having a very safe haven within the cons is a great way to work on the social skills. And if you thought that you didn't have the 8 hours a day or 8 hours a month to be able to contribute, most of the people, 41%, said they got all of these same benefits just being volunteering that day of the con. They expanded their networks, they worked on their non-technical skills, they were able to gain experience. So don't think that you need to do this all the time. Maybe pick 2 or 3 cons next year that you're going to answer the call of volunteers and start that process going. We did really delve into stress from volunteering. I don't know if you saw the people in the staff shirts. I don't think that they really looked like they were having a great time. They were a little stressed. A lot of the stress we found was anxiety, depression, physical stress, neck, back pain. We're not really good at taking care of ourselves. But the bottom was fascinating. 98% said that they found volunteering fulfilling. And it is not the job of your employer or a recruiter or me or your parents to make sure that you're fulfilled in your job. That's your job. So finding a place that you can get fulfillment without looking to someone else to provide it to you. A lot of people think, I'm just not happy in my job. I'm sorry, you're not supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be, contributing. Yes, it's great. Some of us are really happy with our jobs. But find someplace else that you can get fulfillment. If you're thinking you're going to get it just at your job, then you have some other bigger questions to look at. You really need to find, what do you want to do with your life, not constantly be blaming your employer because you're not happy. What I loved is this statistic. 94% of the respondents felt that they had a positive impact on the industry. Okay, we are in an industry that talks about breaches, attacks, we talk about suicide, depression, burnout. We talk about everything that is negative out there. There's no other industry I know that can say that volunteering is having a positive impact on the overall industry. So if you want to make a difference, a lot of us do want to make a difference, you can say, I made a difference because I volunteered. I got out of my shell, I got into the community, and I actually connected with at least one other person. And that one other person was the person that actually said, hey, my company is hiring, I think you'd be a great fit. And then you kept volunteering and you kept learning more skills. But realize that just you showing up and being at a conference or an organization, you're having an overall positive impact on the community. We also asked, how did they engage their employers? And this is something you can take back to your employer and say, you know, people who volunteer in the community, they are supported by their employer for doing community volunteering, because the employers saw that this was a way to build the non-technical skills. This is a way for you to be an employer brand advocate for the company. And it was also because they had that conversation with their employer about volunteering and how important it was to them. Your employer is not a mind reader. They are not going to know what you do on the weekends, why you have these calls. You need to go to them and say, I like to volunteer, I'm giving back in my community, which is going to tell them, wow, this person is taking initiative. This person actually has leadership ability. But I volunteer in the community because it makes a difference. I expand my network, I'm learning on my skills. And then you have to start the conversation of, okay, are you going to be able to support me in my volunteering? Sometimes they'll have the money in the budget to do, sometimes they won't. If they don't, you might want to take the survey to them and say, look, employers in the community are supporting people who are volunteering. You can also take this statistic to them. 60% of the people in the survey said they stayed with their current employer because the employer was supporting their volunteering efforts. And the way they were supporting their volunteer efforts was a wide breadth of different ways. The first was paid time off to volunteering at the conference or organization. If they were presenting, sometimes they paid for their airfare and their hotel. If they were part of an organizing committee for a specific conference, they also provided sponsorship. But this is the communication you have to have with your management. This is what you have to go to your HR department and your training department and say, I think this is of value to me in my career development, and I would like to see your support on this. If they don't, you can tell them this, that over 97% of people said they would move to a new company that did support their volunteering efforts. So it is fascinating. People are taking the time to research who supports volunteering efforts. There are a lot of companies that are in the community. I can name 6 or 7, but I don't want to, give special preference. But they already figured this out. There are a lot of companies in our community that pay sponsorship, pay for travel to be able to present. And it's the conversation that you need to start having with your management. Is this something that you can provide me? If not, when can we start talking about it? If not, you might want to start talking to other companies that do support volunteering. But be sure you're keeping these questions in your overall interview process. Don't just ask about the benefits and do they pay for training and do they have good vacation leave. What do you guys do in the community? Do you show up in the community? Do you support people being in the community? That is going to tell you the kind of overall company culture, and if that is some kind of company you want to go to, or if you're just going to be an automaton within that company. If you would like to find this survey, it is on our SlideShare account/slideshare.net on the cybersecjobs.com page. So as some of you probably saw, I have these 2 Star Wars Pez dispensers. And I asked Lost Knowledge what was the best way to distribute these. And his answer, so you can blame him, is one of these goes to the 2 most interesting questions I am asked that is pertained to my presentation. Ready, go. Yes?
All right. If you're at the point where you're looking for like a management position, senior management, director, or even eventually looking at CISO or something like that, how does this change? What's different? Do you hire a headhunter who works for you, or like what would change if you're at that point in your career where you want to make the next step?
Good question. So I would only go to a headhunter if you knew someone else who had used them and you were able to follow their track record of what other people they place. And headhunters tend to be on retainer by a company. And so they're really looking for those top people, like the top 2 or 3 positions. And it sounds like you're more asking for a question that's more management, upper management going there before. So that is where I like to say virtual mentorship. And we talk about mentorship a lot in the community, and finding the right mentors is very interesting. But if you can find people who have the job that you want in 3 or 4 years, start connecting with them, start seeing where they're speaking, they'll talk about what they're reading, and you're sort of shadowing them, not stalking, shadowing them. And every now and then, maybe reach out to them and ask them for their advice. Now, I can't tell you how many times people reach out to me, and the question is, do you have a job for me? I'm like, I don't know who you are, what you do, what you want to do, anything like that. So be very specific with the question, not how do I get to the next stage of my career? More of, being very, very specific so that they can handle, people want to help other people. It's just when there are these big, these open-ended questions that, can be answered in a dissertation, have very, very specific questions. And then maybe if they're like, I can't answer that, well, can I answer this other question? Again, people want to help you, but they can't answer, what am I going to do with my life kind of questions. Make sense? Okay. Oh boy, now we've got, yeah.
I'll be bringing them up.
Okay. I guess I broke the rules and I was supposed to wait. Oh, okay. So yeah. Okay, we got one down. I know.
So I meet people at conferences and things like that every so often, but it's hard. I find it hard to, get in touch with these people and start the process of networking. Do you have any tips on lowering the barrier to entry?
Well, Nicole is sharing with you her name badge. I'm gonna hold back on if you want or not. I'm gonna do the other 2 questions, and then between the 3 of you, you can fight it out. We'll have the battle, the cage battle. Networking is hard. It's getting out of your comfort zone. I would say at each conference, each event, your goal is one person. You will talk to several people, but your goal is one person. And don't run into the conference like, you're my one person. Wait. Yeah, people are going to be running out of the doors. Take the time throughout the day. If there's one person that you keep seeing and you keep having conversations with, by the 3rd conversation you've had with someone, that is the time to say, can we connect? Can we follow on Twitter? Can we connect with LinkedIn? And some people will sit there and say, I'm uncomfortable with that. Others will probably have a fake email address that they give you, which is fine. But realize, don't set your goal to have 10 new friends by the end of BSidesDC. Be sure you have just one person. But I would say, have it be 2 people, have it be one person that you met in the conference and one person you met at the exhibit tables. How many of you don't have to raise your hand, how many of you went to the exhibit tables just to pick up swag? Okay. How many of you actually had a good conversation with an exhibitor and asked to connect with them? Okay, gold star. Wish I had more Pez to give out. That's it. One person from an exhibit table and one person who is a participant. That should be your goal. Is that helpful? Okay. Okay, this young lady's next. The microphone.
So when you're in an organization, you like working there, and you're not necessarily looking to be promoted, but let's say your own department is going through a lot of change, and you are looking at another department thinking, wow, I really want to get over there, and you've got the skill set, and you're networking with people there, but nothing's really coming of it. Like, what are some tips or things that you can do to better market yourself internally if you already like the company you're at?
So the best way to create your brand within your own company is to be the person that takes on the most difficult project that no one else wants to take on. I mean, it's putting yourself out there and saying, no one wants to take that one project, I'll be on it. But if there's not that, I would say show yourself that you have leadership and you have the company's interests at heart, creating a Tech Talk brown bag, creating some way that you're creating community within your organization, because if they see that you're pulling together people from different departments rather than trying to play one department over another, they're seeing you as a leader and teamwork versus someone who's just going to stay in their swim lane. And that's going to be a way to create your identity. The gentleman over here.
You mentioned home lab. How would you present that on a resume, or is that in a different context?
So home labs definitely come up through a conversation. They're definitely something that you want to create the talking points so that you present it in your phone interview. It is something that you constantly talk about throughout the interview. It is also something that I wouldn't put it in the bullet points, but I would definitely put it at the bottom of the resume as far as community interests. So that's where you would list your various different volunteer opportunities. And when you list your volunteering, just list the conference, unless you're part of the board and you want to say board member. A lot of times people will list out, I folded 600 t-shirts and I did this and I did that, so please don't do that. Just list the conference that you do. So I would put it there. Have had home lab, have built such and such, things like that. Any other questions? I was given, okay, I was told 5 minutes, which I know I'm down to 3 minutes. Okay. Yeah, well.
Yeah, at my current company, I've been there 15 years, and I'm about a decade away from retirement, but I've wound up gone into a technical track that's not where I planned on being in the first place. I'm a senior web developer. Mm-hmm. And I've sent a email to my boss and my boss's boss saying that I wanted to get into cybersec, and told them about the volunteering stuff I'm doing, like this con, mm-hmm. That I'm working on a paper for another con next year and stuff like that. Does it sound like I'm going in the right direction, or?
It does sound like you're going in the right direction. I think that I would challenge yourself more in the volunteering community and getting more of a leadership job, because if you have 15 years experience at a specific company, you should be looked at more from a senior manager leader role. So you need to show in the community that you've had a leadership role, that you've handled the workforce issues, that you've handled the budgeting, you've handled all of those issues, and you can go to them and say, I already have the leadership experience. Okay, they're going to throw me off stage. The networking question 1. Sorry, Nicole. Sorry. So this is my last presentation of 2019. Thank you so much for making it wonderful.